Welcome back to Breakdown. It's Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. JJ, we're going to do SEC versus the Big Ten. We're going to put a wrap on the 2023 football season. You ready to break it down?
You know what? Last game of the season, last college football game of the season. I'm ready to break that one down.
Let's review it. Okay, we're going to start off by, if I could sing, I would do Hail to the Victors, but nobody out there want to hear that. But JJ, Hail to the Victors. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who got it better than Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines?
That is a good question. Right about now, I could argue his brother might have a little bit better. Number one seed throughout the playoffs, likely MVP, Lamar Jackson. You can say what you want about Jim Harbaugh in the whole Harbaugh family. They can coach. The dad won a championship at Western Kentucky, and I just interrupted you. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
The answer to my question as to who has it better than Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverine, the answer is nobody. Hail to the victors. There you go. There you go. JJ, who's more Michigan beat Washington in the championship game, 34-13. We're going to review that. But JJ,
yeah,
who's more unhappy about Michigan's win? Is it Ohio State or the SEC?
It is 100% Ohio State.
Okay.
That's not even a question.
Okay. In that game, the 34-13 game, Michigan victory, what stood out for you in that victory?
34-13? I would say the first play that Washington had the ball on offense. The handoff to Dylan Johnson, he re-aggravated one of his lower body injuries, and he didn't have any burst or any ability to move horizontally after that. I would say that was a significant play. That's what stood out to me. What stood out to you?
It was so much. What stood out to me was the Donovan Edwards.
Well, yeah. Which one?
His 6 carries.
Okay. But which?
His 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, his first 2 carries were spectacular.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, that stood out to me. The fact that Michigan was able to run the ball 303 yards rushing versus Washington 46.
Yeah, and I think how many of that did they accumulate in the first quarter? I think it was like 190.
I was going to say 200. It was a lot of them.
They had 229 yards of offense, and I think 190 of it was on the ground. Okay. Or maybe it was 179. I can't remember. But it was over 170, so it was a lot. Too much.
What's your takeaway from the game overall?
Overall?
Just give me your review of the game. I mean, what happened, what didn't happen, what just a review on your takeaway from the game.
Well, the best unit on the field was Michigan's defense, specifically their pass rush. It was a lot to be told about, Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense.
Yeah. And
Michigan's defense won that one. Washington had the best offense in the country according to the people who vote for the Joe Moore Award. They won that award.
The best offensive line.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't really. That didn't really seem to materialize in the game. There were a lot of false starts, a lot that went uncalled. There was a lot of pre-snap movement from Michigan that confused Washington, and you could tell that. I mean, in the previous game against Alabama, Ohio State center, he transferred, but he was Alabama center. I mean, he was struggling to snap. I think the stunts and the misdirection from where the pressure is coming from really, really confused both of the teams Michigan played in the championship.
Washington's offensive line was voted the number 1 offensive line in college football. And I don't like to call out players, but number 73, and I wish I knew his name, but maybe it's a good thing I don't know his name, for Washington, the right tackle, man, he had a really, really, really bad night. But Michigan only got 1 sack.
Yeah.
They only got 1 sack. Michael Penix was able to get the ball out super quick.
He was, yeah.
Another thing that stood out for me, Washington, high-powered offense, how many plays did they have, JJ, that was over 15 yards?
Couldn't have been too many. I mean, they had a huge one taken back after number 73 had that hold.
They had 1 play, and that was a 44-yard pass to their receiver.
Romadunzia?
Yeah, I can't pronounce his name that well. But other than that high-powered offense was stuck in neutral. I guess there's some truth to the fact defense wins championships. Offense wins games. Defense wins championship. Michigan's defense. I will give them their credit because I actually did not think their defense was as good as their numbers during the season because I was thinking that their competition level was not that great. But JJ, the fact that Michigan played Alabama in the first round of the playoff, I think it's a good thing. A lot of people wanted Michigan to play Florida State, and had they played Florida State and then played Washington, people would have gone back and said, well, they didn't play anybody in the playoff. But given the fact that they dominated both Alabama on the front line and they dominated Washington on the front line, you got to give Michigan their credit. You got to give them their credit.
There's one undefeated team that's left in college football, and it's the Michigan Wolverines.
Okay. JJ, the MVPs of that game, Blake Corum and Will Johnson. Blake on offense and Will on defense. Do you agree with the MVP?
You know, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of debate you can make for the offensive MVP. Could be Donovan Edwards. It could be. Could you give it to Blake Corum? I have no issue giving it to Blake Corum on the offensive side of things. And while I do think that Will Johnson made the most significant play of the game with the interception of Michael Penix, I would give Mikey Sandersill the defensive MVP. He also had an interception, but he
took it back.
He did take it back, but he
further, not all the way.
But he, you know how normally like the middle linebacker lines up the defense and like you know, does all of that. Mikey
the middle linebacker is a quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's what Mikey Sandersill was for the defense. He was calling everything out. He was diagnosing and identifying like what routes they were anticipating, and you know, he had to think the game and play the game, and he played, I think, just as good a game. And he had to think a little harder, I would say.
In my mind, the offensive player easily should have been Donovan Edwards. His 2 touchdowns in the first quarter set the tone for the whole football game. If you take away those 2 immense plays, the tone of the game potentially could have been a lot different. Although he only had 6 carries for 104 yards. You know, he didn't do a lot of work that night, but the work he did do was critical in my mind. Will Michigan, JJ, be loaded to repeat next year?
We just have no clue. We don't know who's all going to come back. We know Blake Corum will not be back. We know Cornelius Johnson will not be back. There's quite a few super seniors on this team that have exhausted eligibility. We don't know if their coach is going to be back. We don't know if their 20-year-old quarterback is going to be back, who turns 21 in, I think, a couple weeks. We don't. There's a lot. I mean, we don't know if Donovan Edwards is going to be back. I mean, he only rushed for 400 yards this year, and 100 of them came in that game.
Well, you know, I think Michigan had 7 or 8 players who've already committed to the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. And those are seniors. I mean,
so they're gone.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, you know, the juniors and sophomores, redshirt sophomores who can go as well.
Well, also, do you know the juniors are now allowed to attend the Senior Bowl?
I did not know that.
I can't remember if it starts this year or next year. It's either 2024 or 2025. But juniors are now allowed to attend the titled, quote unquote, Senior Bowl.
You like that?
Sure, why not? Who cares? Why not just keep calling it a Senior Bowl and invite juniors? Who cares?
That's news to me. I did not know that. But JJ, you mentioned Michigan's quarterback. Let's talk about the 2 quarterbacks in that game. How do you think both starting quarterback draft status was impacted by the game?
I don't think either one of them had their draft status rise from that game. I think Michael Penix's game was a reminder of why he's 24 and still in college. For 4 of his years in college, his season ended because of injury. And that game, his season didn't end because of injury, but he got, you know, I mean, you saw him
rolled over late in the game.
He did. His left tackle or his offensive lineman stepped on his foot.
It kind of rolled over on his foot. Well, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah,
that happened. It looked like he had bruised ribs when he was walking out of the tunnel. He has a lengthy injury history, and I don't think like the production from that game. I mean, he rushed his throws. You know, he didn't have the time that he thought he did, but I think the injury history is the more of an issue for him. For JJ, I would say it was a lack of production.
Do you think either of these two quarterbacks will be in the NFL next year?
I think Michael Penix will get drafted in the late first round.
So only one.
I don't know if JJ McCarthy is going
I
to
know.
go to the NFL.
I don't know that either, but I'm just asking, do you think he might go?
As of right
if
now,
you were advising JJ McCarthy, what would you advise him?
To come back and
Come
get
back?
better. Probably. I mean, well, actually, I would advise him to see what his draft grade would be.
Okay.
And if he gets a draft grade in the either first or second round, I'd say go. And if it's third or below, I'd say come back.
Fair enough. JJ, anything more you want to talk about that particular game? Because before I want to talk about some coaches, but anything left on the game that you want to point out?
No, I think Michigan outcoached and outplayed Washington. I think the better team won. There were some controversial calls and some timings on some calls, but there was also a lot of non-calls. Michigan got away with an egregious hold, but Washington got away with a couple of egregious false starts. So I would say that the better team won, but it was disappointing that the running back got hurt on the first play of the game. Because he was also, I talked about in the previous podcast episode about how much I liked his pass protection.
Yeah, you did.
And you could tell they missed that. And they were unwilling to go to their backup running back. For whatever reason, they did not go to their backup running back. They played a hurt starter. And I think that that's the only thing that I would say is disappointing.
So Michigan, they were laser focused, us against the world. The talk during the season, the coach's suspension did not distract them whatsoever. They had a business trip to do in Houston, and they took care of business. The only negative for Michigan, and I'm going to bring this up because it's not really a negative, is Michigan was not their normal self when it comes to penalty. They typically commit 2 to 3 penalties per game. They committed 5 penalties for 45 yards in the championship game, which is unusual for Michigan, but
and some could argue they should have been called for more.
yeah. JJ, can we talk about Michigan's coach?
Why not?
We talked a little bit about him in our previous broadcast, but JJ, now that it's all over, true or false, is Jim Harbaugh's work at Michigan's done?
It is if he says it is. I mean, he's done everything he needed to do here. He accomplished what he set out to do. He said in his press conference on the first day he was hired, failure is not an option, and he did not fail.
In your mind, is this work done? You said it is if he says it is. In your mind, before he says it, or if he doesn't even say anything about it, what say you?
Of course, it's 100% done. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't. If I'm him, I don't have time for the NCAA's ridiculous parade of an investigation. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to recruit my own players back after. I don't want to have to do the recruiting. I mean, some people are college coaches. Some people are NFL coaches. I think Jim Harbaugh is one of those ambidextrous. Like, he could coach either. And I think he's already won a national championship. And I think he wants to
Win a Super Bowl.
do what Pete Carroll did and win one in college and win one in the pros.
Okay.
Why not? I mean, he was one missed pass away from having that already on his resume.
Well, we'll wait and see if he decides to go, and then we'll talk about the potential replacement at Michigan State. But what are some potential landing
At
spots?
Michigan.
I'm sorry. A lot of Spartan fans.
Well, they got a new coach too.
Very true. Well, what are some potential landing spots for Coach Harbaugh if he decides to make the NFL his new home?
Well, Pete Carroll just got removed of his duties in Seattle, so that's a job that opened up. I don't really know if that's a situation that he would want. The Chargers have a opening. They have a young quarterback. They have a young quarterback in Justin Herbert. Atlanta just opened up. They fired their coach. I have no idea where their draft status is, but I mean, I'm sure that they might be interested in him. Tennessee just fired Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
There's been a lot.
Washington
Has already let go of Ron Rivera,
And the team-
and Charlotte has let go of their coach.
the team that Harbaugh played for.
Yeah, the Bears are retaining their head coach.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, so they're firing Getsy got fired. The offensive coordinator got fired.
Okay.
But
My bad. So
the Bears are retaining their head coach.
JJ, let me sneak in a team that's under the radar for you.
New England Patriots.
Nope.
Okay.
Although they do need a new coach. This is a team that's currently in the playoff right now, NFL playoff. The number 2 seed in the NFC. If they do not get to the Super Bowl, it would not surprise me if Jerry Jones go out looking for a coach. How surprised would you be if Dallas lost? Say if Dallas lost to Green Bay this coming weekend. How surprised would you be if Jerry Jones fired his coach?
If they lost to Green Bay, I would be not surprised at all. If they lost to any other team, I would be very surprised. Green Bay does not match up well. I don't think they have the ability to block like a Parsons or Deron Bland's a first-team All-Pro cornerback. I just don't think Green Bay matches up well with Dallas. So if Dallas did lose that game, I would think Mike McCarthy would get. I think the probability of him getting fired would be at least 50-50. But if they lost in the next round, I don't think that they're.
For instance, if they win the first game, and Detroit win the first round, and then Dallas loses to Detroit, McCarthy is still okay as Dallas coach.
That would be my. Maybe if they lost 63-3, the way TCU did, he'd get fired. But assuming it was a close game, I would be shocked if he wasn't retained.
Okay. JJ, anything else on Coach Harbaugh?
No. Hail to the victors. They're innocent, and
they're what?
They're innocent, and I'm very happy that
you lost me. Say that again.
You just look. You can listen to this when we release it and rewind that. You'll hear it a couple of times. Again, they're innocent, but hail to the victors. That's all we have to say about Jim Harbaugh.
Okay, I agree with everything you said today so far, except the one thing. But JJ,
let's move on to another coach that we know won't be.
Let's talk about coach in the SEC who today did some breaking news. Alabama, Nick Saban announced that he is retiring after winning 7 national championships. 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU.
And Jim Harbaugh coached against him in his last game.
So what impact to football in general, the SEC in specific, and Alabama more specific, what impact is all that of Nick Saban's retirement?
It's a huge impact. He's the greatest coach of his generation, arguably the greatest coach of all time. But he has to compete with another coach at the University of Alabama for that moniker. It's huge. The timing of it makes you wonder who's going to take that job. If Michigan and Alabama both open up in the same offseason after, they both finished in the top 4, played each other in a playoff game, and Michigan won the championship, that would be a storybook. That'd be a storybook offseason. It would be a lot of topics on ESPN. But that would be an amazing. I don't know.
If both programs did open up for a head coach, which would be the more desired position?
Well, that's the question. Alabama has more talent in their vicinity and surrounding in the area. There's a lot more talent. There's also a lot more competition. You're adding Texas and Oklahoma to a conference that already has LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M.
You adding Washington, USC, Oregon to the Big Ten. Okay.
So and UCLA. UCLA, I think their last championship was like in the 60s. Oregon has never won a championship. Washington has won a split championship in 91. They're not the same thing as if you look at the recruiting rankings, you look at the histories of the past few years.
I agree.
Yeah.
Which brand is bigger, JJ? Which brand is bigger? When it's strictly football.
Alabama football. If we're talking college athletics and we can include the Fab Five and we can include all of that, then Michigan, I would say. But if we're just talking football, I would say.
Well, we're talking football coaches.
Alabama.
So you would say Alabama is the more preferred job over Michigan when it comes to coaching?
It depends. It depends on what you want. It depends on where you want to live. It depends on.
Okay, true.
It depends on a lot. I think there are positives to both. I think expectations are higher in Alabama than they are at Michigan. I think I would rather succeed a 1-time champion in Jim Harbaugh before I would want to succeed a 7-time champion and 6-time at that school. Those are insane shoes to fill. Who was the shooting guard after Michael Jordan left at the Bulls?
I don't think a shooting guard will get the same recognition as a coach, though.
If the shooting guard is Michael Jordan, I think he can get plenty of recognition. The most recognizable person in
Not in college though. When Mike was in college, he was not the most recognized college player at that time.
Oh yeah, well in college, but
Right.
but I was making a comparison to like the NBA though. So anyway, that doesn't even matter. Anyway, my point is my point was they're big shoes to fill.
Okay. What impact would this have on the current roster at Alabama? Will more players opt out for the transfer portal? Will they stay? I mean, the recruits that they already got committed, will those recruits waver and go someplace else? How big of a hit will Alabama take on their roster, their coaching staff? You know, their defensive coordinator just announced he was leaving anyway prior to Nick Saban coming out saying he was gone. So is next year's Alabama going to be anything like this year's Alabama?
Who knows? I mean, next year's Alabama might be coached by, maybe it's going to be Lane Kiffin. I mean, maybe it'll be Dabo Swinney. Maybe if you're FSU and you're Mike Norvell and you just saw yourself get knocked out of the college football playoff, maybe you want to take that risk and go to Alabama. I mean, maybe it's. I mean, I think it depends on who the next coach is. I think some certain players might be, depending on who gets hired in, might be more willing to stay. But I think every single player is updating their resume, so to speak. Their DMs are open for coaches to slide in.
Let me ask you a question before I get ready to get out of here, unless you have some more things you want to bring up. Could the guy that Nick Saban make those commercials with replace him at Alabama?
No.
Okay.
No. What do you think he could?
Good question.
Do you think Deion Sanders would?
You know what? That's a hard question for me to answer because I do think he would bring a lot of energy to the program. Now, would that energy translate into wins? That I don't know. But I do think he'd bring a lot of energy. Would you even look at him as a potential coach?
No.
You would not? Okay. And why not?
I don't think he was in it for a long term. I think he wants to coach his son in college, which is fine, especially at a place like Colorado. But if I'm Alabama, I think I want someone that's going to be there for the decades, potentially. A decade at least.
Okay. Well, if Coach Prime were to go there, he would, and stays to the age of Nick Saban, he would have been there for a decade. But I don't know. To me, I just bring that out. I'm not saying I would, but I'm saying I would at least give it some thought. And on that note, JJ, so much to talk about. We haven't even hit basketball, and it is January right now. You know that, right?
Yeah, it is January. There's basketball to talk about. There's transfer portal news. There's a lot to talk about. Ohio State got a running back commit the minute after the championship game ended. Judkins from Ole Miss transferred up there. And
he led the SEC in rushing.
As a freshman.
As a freshman. So, JJ.
Yeah.
My work is done for right now.
Well, mine is too.
But I'll be back. You come back and listen to us as well. WPS. We'll pick Suey. Peace, love, and blessings.
Same.
All right. JJ. Okay.